What's up, everyone? It's your boy Shaf, aka That Mill Guy, coming at you with another video, this time talking about, well, the best, top 5, I should say, modern mill sideboard cards of August 2021, kind of going into or before the Innistrad Midnight Hunt meta. So we're talking about what are the best cards for you to put in your mill sideboard as paper play opens up, as we hop into this new meta. What are we looking for and what are we trying to beat? So we're going to be going through individual cards, and I'm going to be talking about the numbers to which you want to play them in, how you want to play them, and we might do some kind of bonus stuff in between. So let's get right to it with a preface discussion. Why do we want to have this discussion? Why is sideboarding so important? So I would hope that more franchise players understand that, especially in modern, sideboarding is very, very important just because of the nature of the format. It's very silver bullet heavy. Decks really try and go at one angle. They have one plan, but recently with Modern Horizons 2, a lot of that has kind of homogenized. There's a lot of decks that can be attacked at multiple angles, but there still is one primary angle that you're hoping to beat them at. But regardless, you're hoping for these kind of super high impact sideboard cards that do multiple things. So that's what we want to try and attack. Just kind of looking at the metagame right now, as of today, the recording of this video, we see that mill, obviously tier 1 deck, kind of top 10 deck right here, but we still see a lot of aggressive or combo based strategies running around. There's a lot of favorable matchups from what we're reading here. I'm thinking of course decks like Ammy the Titan, Control, Crashing Footfalls, 5-color elementals. I still think that's favorable. It's maybe slightly over 50%. That's my take. And obviously a lot of more unfavorable matchups like Is It Tempo, whatever the hell Grix's build this is. And this one's going to be a little bit tricky too. It's Velomachus turns. This one can be a little bit tricky too if you don't build your sideboard right with the right counter spells. So that's what we're going to discuss. Mill is a tier 1 deck, so we really got to be ready for it, especially in the mirror sense. So first and foremost, with that being said, I want to talk about, well, an honorable mention, Emrakul the goddamn Aeon's Torn. This has been said to me multiple times because I feel like, as the mod for the mill Discord, I feel like I throw this across a lot. Sometimes you die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the goddamn villain. You have to respect the mill mirror in any type of event, whether that be your LGS, a modern league, a local 1K competitive tournament, or a modern challenge. You have to recognize that you as a mill player are playing one of the best decks in modern. Your opponent might be as well. What better way to do that than a shuffle effect? And it definitely comes out of left field considering how most modern mill sideboards are built. They're not really ready to deal with something like this. They're hoping to win the mid-range battle with cards that we're going to talk about later. Something like this can be a very spicy include for that mill mirror. And hey, I'm going to be showing you a little bit later. Me personally, a little close to my heart, got a signed copy of this. So come on, that local swag, you got to make it happen. So first and foremost, we're going at number 5 best card to put into your mill sideboard. We're talking about Go for the Throat. So specifically, I'm talking about Doomblade variants or kill spells that work at instant speed. So there's a reason Bloodchief's Thirst is not here. The meta's not really slow enough to warrant something like that. And there aren't really that many Planeswalkers being played that we have to beat, sorry. We can usually just beat them in the long game. We don't have to answer them on the spot, so we don't play cards like Eliminate. We're thinking of Go for the Throat for bigger creatures, right? We're talking about kind of big dragons, kind of bigger creatures that hit you in the air that your crabs can't block, stuff like that. And specifically, again, the instant speed. So whatever your flavor of Doomblade variant is, that's really what you want to go for. I personally prefer Go for the Throat, again, just because Scales is obviously a deck that exists right now, Hardened Scales, but usually a combination of 4 Fatal Push and 4 Drown in the Lock in the main board can usually seal up a matchup like that. So this is great against really every other creature based strategy that, whether it's tribal or is not, kills Dragon Rage Channeler, kills monkeys, and that's really what this ultimately becomes. I'd play this as a 1 or 2 of in the sideboard. A lot of people are talking about maybe playing copies in the main board, and that's fair as well. If you have the slots for it, you could play a 1 of in the main board, but ultimately what it comes down to is you have to answer Dragon Rage Channeler, but also Ragavan. Those are cards that are must answer on the spot right now in Modern, and that's why these decks are powerful, as we saw in the metagame. I should note also that right now there has been a spoiler put out for Innistrad Midnight Hunt, and there is a card called Infernal Grasp. Now, I don't really want to show it on screen right now just because it is a spoiler, so we're going to leave that out. But Infernal Grasp is 1 black, 1 colorless, destroy target creature, you lose 2 life. So that could be a very valuable kind of Doomblade variant that comes along, remembering that that is probably top 3, arguably the best Doomblade variant that has come out in Magic so far. So that's kind of crazy. There's also the non-legendary version where you destroy target creature that's non-legendary. Those are probably in close contention there, but these are cards that you really want to have in your sideboard for the bigger creatures that Fatal Push can't answer. They might have the graveyard answers for stuff like Drown Lock. Stuff like this is very valuable as extra pieces. So kind of moving on to number 4, we're talking about something like Aether Gust. Now specifically, Aether Gust is going to help round out matchups against stuff like Endurance. That's really the key card that I'm thinking about here. Now Endurance is the new elemental that got introduced with Modern Horizons 2, green 1 for a 3/4 with Flash and Reach. And when it enters the battlefield, you can obviously evoke it in by exiling another green card, and you target player shuffles their graveyard back into the library. Obviously not great for trying to mill someone out. This is something that happens actively, and specifically, I can actually show it here, the 5-color elementals list. They usually play an Endurance in the main board and really the other 3 in the sideboard. So this is something that we really have to worry about in the green deck. So they already are going through the card disadvantage of playing this and it immediately dying because they're probably evoking it, losing a green card out of their hand, probably something like a Voice of Resurgence or an Omnath, and then on top you're able to Aether Gust it, put it back, not into their hand, but back on top of their library. So it really helps play around cards like Veil of Summer, where it doesn't matter. You're not actually counting the card. All you're doing is taking and putting back on top. Now, if you mill them, obviously, it kind of acts like a soft counter, where you're putting it back in their graveyard. Or if you're not milling them, it's tempo, because you now know the next card that they're going to draw. So that can be really powerful depending on the line you want to take. So again, Aether Gust, really great on the green part, but then on the red part as well, being able to answer stuff like Ragavan, Dragon Rage Channeler, heck, even Lightning Bolts, very key pieces like that. And again, the tempo is big because you're going to be able to control what they draw and just be very, kind of keeping in mind, do they keep it on the bottom? Do they keep it on the top? That can give you information as to whether, hey, they might have more threats, or they're just trying to get desperate. They can't actually stick with that Dragon Rage Channel. They're putting it underneath. They need something else that's going to work for them. Stuff like that to consider. So I would usually play this as a 2 or 1 of, depending on what your other complementary counter spells are. That's what I would consider. Are you playing stuff like Mystical Disputes or other counter spells? Well, then maybe this is more color specific, so you want to be playing 2 copies. Something like that. Depends on what the rest of your sideboard is. Myself personally, I'm not playing any copies of this right now, just because I'm playing other cards in my sideboard that are also high impact, which we're going to go over kind of close to the end of the video, so stick around for that. Next up, we're going to number 3. We're talking about Soul Guide Lantern. Soul Guide Lantern, honestly, just all-star from the moment it was revealed in Theros. And you know what, to be fair, it was an all-star then. It took some weeks for the modern milled community to really take this on. But the key to this is, especially when Uro was around, this would enter the battlefield, snipe out the Uro in the graveyard, and you didn't even need to hit anything else. You could just cycle it away to draw a card, and the graveyard's still there for stuff like Visions of Beyond, Drown in the Lock. That's the ultimate versatility of this card. In the matchups where you expect a shuffle effect, such as Eldrazi Tron, Green Tron, whatever it is, you're at a local event, players hate you, so they're playing stuff like Gaia's Blessing in their sideboard, you could bring this in, know that your primary plan is still good, milling them out is still gonna work, but you have this in the back, just as that quick sideboard bullet answer when their graveyard starts shuffling back in due to a trigger. So you exile their graveyard, it goes away, but guess what? If you find out, maybe through a quick surgical extraction, or, you just know their deck list, that they don't have one, guess what? It just draws. It's just free like that. So that's what I love about it, and ultimately, in the end of the day, it's less than 2 CMC. Remember, Loros of the Dream Den is able to recur this. It's kind of budget bauble, if you so will. So not much to complain about here. When you're comparing this stuff like Relic or Progenitus, remember Relic forces you to exile both graveyards. That's problematic. What if you just want to exile their graveyard, keep your graveyard up because maybe you're close to 20 cards in your graveyard and you want to turn on Visions of Beyond with that? That's pretty valuable. So you don't want to play cards like that. Grafdigger's Cage. Well, the cards in the graveyard are actually really relevant, especially with stuff like Living End, which gets around Grafdigger's Cage. So you really want to make sure that you have a card that is versatile, like I was saying in the beginning, but also has really shutout effects to deal with these decks. So I would play a card like this as a 3 of, arguably a 4 of as well. I personally play it as a 3 of, but I could definitely see a 4 of as your ultimate secondary graveyard haste source outside of Crypt Incursion, outside of Surgical Extraction. Very solid card on all angles. Let's go to number 2. This is a personal. I love this card. Personal favorite card of mine. I think this card is honestly a slam dunk, and the only thing keeping me from putting this at number 1 is just I have to bring myself back and understand that a lot of this is probably subjective here. But look, 2 mana, blue and 1. Easier to cast than Counterspell, might I add. Counter target instant and sorcery spell. Well, Shaft, there you go. It's not actually Counterspell. You can't counter creatures or planeswalkers with this. Hold on. Searches controller's graveyard hand library for any number of cards with the same name and exile them. That player shuffles, then draws equal to the number of cards exiled this way if it was in their hand. Cool. This is essentially Surgical Extraction on a Counterspell. Boom. For those of you not playing this card, you're missing out. Think about how much Modern Horizons 2 has homogenized the format. What do I mean by that? How many play sets are hanging around Modern? Let's go back to our Modern meta list. Let's boop out of Elementals. That's a creature heavy deck. Let's look at Crashing Footfalls. Oh wait, Crashing Footfalls seems like a pretty good card too. Counter and Surgical? Yeah. Force Negation 4 of, Counter and Surgical. Violent Outburst, Fire and Ice, Counter and Surgical. Look at all these 4 ofs, 3 ofs, 4 ofs. Okay, not convinced yet? Okay, let's go to another combo deck. What happens against Living End when you Counter and Surgical Living End? One more example. Come on, folks. One more example. Telling you why this card is amazing. Let's say you play up against Control. Oh, wow. Counter and Surgical Lightning Bolt. 4 of. Counterspell. 4 of. Archranger's Charm. 4 of. Look, the list goes on. The amount of playsets of powerful spells that exist in Modern right now that you can snipe out with Test of Talents, it's dumb. Look, Spicy include, because this, honestly, outside of Embercool's the Aeon Torrent, is I think the mirror breaker. If you are having trouble beating the Modern Mill Mirror, guess what, folks? Look at your own damn deck list. Look at this. Well, we're not gonna look. Tibalt, a little bit spicier. We're gonna go at dare I say, a bit of a normal list here. A little bit too spicy for my take. So Archive Trap, 4 of. Counter Surgical and Archive Trap. Fracture Sandy, 4 of. Drown in the Lock, 4 of. Visions of Beyond, 4 of. Tasha's Hideous Laughter, usually a 4 of. In this one, a 3 of. Post Sideboard, Mystical Dispute, a 3 of. Look at all these cards that you are countering and removing all copies of. The Mill Mirror is beat, in essence, without Emrakul the Aeon Torrent, it is beat by card density and card velocity. If you have more mill spells than your opponent, if you are casting more mill spells than your opponent, you are winning the mirror. Test of Talents ensures that. Test of Talents destroys all of these spell heavy decks. Think about it for the next time that you want to fill up some slots. Me personally, I'm jamming 3. I don't like 4. I could see an argument for 2. I like 3. 3 ensures that by numbers, I will see at least 1 copy usually in a game. 4 means I will definitely see a copy and likely see one in my opening hand. But it's not that powerful. Remember, it's just instants and sorceries, not creatures or planeswalkers. So I do want to see some copies of it. I put 3 of them in the sideboard. I personally like playing them over Mystical Dispute, but Mystical Dispute has its own arguments for it as well. There's a lot of decks where this card is powerful, but honestly, look, it's going to be good at all points in the game. Tested Talents. There's no, mana requirement for it where your opponent can pay it out. Powerful card. Really should be considering this in your next sideboard build. Finally, #1 card that you should have in your modern sideboard is Engineered Explosives. Now, this should be a little bit more self-explanatory than most. If you just take a look at the average CMC of most decks in modern, you want this against the creature decks. So specifically, I'm talking about Engineered Explosives as a potential replacement over Damnation right now. August 2021, again, post-Modern Horizons, Innistrad Midnight Hunt, because we haven't seen that set yet. Engineered Explosives, looking at the modern meta right now. Oh, what is going on there? A little bit of script error. Hammer Time, check it out. 0-0, 1 CMC, 2-2-2, 1 CMC, 1 CMC, 1 CMC, all 1 CMC, 0 CMC. Not only does Tasha's Hideous Laughter eat this deck alive, Engineered Explosives is going to help clear the way there. If we look at, is it Tempo? Oh wait, Ragavan, Dragon Rage Channeler, 1 CMC there. Pretty sweet being able to deal with their early pressure. Yeah, finally, let's look at something like this. Ragavan, Dragon Rage Channeler deals with Snapcaster Mages as well. There's a lot of things, including Chalice of the Void, I should mention, that Engineered Explosive deals with. It is so powerful, especially if you're playing 3-color mill like Esper or Sultai. You're going to be able to get these numbers up a little higher, okay, and get around Chalice of the Void on kind of higher numbers and stuff like that. Is going to be really powerful. And definitely right now, I would highly recommend this as a sideboard board wipe, as a 2-of in your modern mill sideboards. Usually board wipes aren't played as more of a 3-of. Usually we're looking for kind of then counter spell, single target removal, answers like that. Highly recommend playing 2 of these instead of maybe your Damnation, Bontu's Last Reckoning type of suites. This is really an ace in the hole against the aggressive strategies where we were talking about stuff like Ghost for the Throat, answering early game threats. Well, if they overwhelm you, Engineered Explosives is really going to help kind of even out the playing field there. So kind of ending off that list there, I want to go into personally, just a little bit of thing at the end here. My own paper sideboard list that I'm going to be bringing to locals kind of coming soon here. Here's a little picture of it. Now look, first things first, Shaf, you're not playing Aether Gust. Now look, I have everything else filled out with some personal favorites, right? Because you got to bring on the personal spice. I'm not exactly going into a modern 1K with this, 5K with this, or I would change some cards around. This is for locals. So taking it again, the Test of Talents is a 3-of, the Soul Guide is a 3-of, the Emrakul, because I'm going into a new meta, I gotta expect mill there. Lorosavi takes up a sideboard slot. I got my Go for the Throat, you know, my Doomblade variant. Echoing Truth is always nice as a catch-all against stuff like, you know, obviously Lane Line of Sanctity if it's still around, but honestly, that's not an answer for decks anymore. Remember that the majority of modern mill spells are just kind of each opponent gets around those hexproof effects, but this deals with problematic stuff like Planeswalkers, again, or Chalice of the Void that you're having a hard time dealing with. Hurkyl's Recall is going to be super sweet against those hardened skills opponent, and marginally against the Hammer Time decks. Now remember, they do play Sigarda's Aid. They can play their artifacts back at instant speed, but it's going to be a great way to return the creatures back and, you know, hopefully deal with the board so that even if they play the Colossus Hammer back, they don't really have a good target for it. So that's why that's there. And personally, I would be playing 2 Engineered Explosives here. I don't have a second Engineered Explosive. And also, I'm trying to flex on some nerds. I got a full art foil Damnation. Trust me, sometimes you just blind your opponent with the foil. Much better there. And then the Crypt Incursion in the sideboard. Right now, I'm testing 1 Crypt Incursion main, 1 in the sideboard, and that instead of the second Crypt Incursion main, I'm also playing an Echoing Truth as a catch-all. So just in case at locals, I come up against something that I don't really have an answer to, a permanent, Planeswalker, Chalice, whatever it is, I have the Echoing Truth as an out. And then finally, Search for Iskanta. This has always been a pet card for myself. If I come up against control decks, this is really one of those cards that helps you win through those long, grindy control games where both of you are exhausting answers. You're gonna be able to filter the top card and really filter through the density of spells that you have. High impact cards like Tasha's Hideous Laughter, or your other 3-mana spells, Archive Trap, Visions of Beyond if you want to draw more cards, helps you kind of filter through once you flip it. So that is kind of my sideboard going into it. So kind of let's round off this video. What do you think? What are some of your favorite sideboard mill cards? Let me know in the comment section down below, and let me know what you think of my 5 sideboard cards. Do you agree or disagree? But we're going to end the video off there. Remember that even the impossible is possible, and as we ponder that thought, I hope you'll join me next time on YouTube, on Twitch, wherever it is, as we take a glimpse into the unthinkable.